It is 10 o'clock and it's time for the council to be in session. We have one member present. It is 10 minutes after 10, and the only person that arrived is Mark Ridley Thomas. He's very conscientious. The other ones are not as conscientious today. Would the other members please come to the council chamber? It is 17 minutes after 10. We have Mr. Alatorre, Mr. Bernardi, Ms. Galanter, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Holden, Mrs. Pikus, and Mr. Ridley Thomas. We have 8 members present. We need 2 for a quorum. Mr. Burnson and Mr. Browdy, would you please come to the council chamber? Oh, yeah. Mr. Burnson is here. We have 9 members. We need 1 for quorum. Mrs. Walders, Mr. Yaroslawski. Okay. Call the roll.
Alatorre, Bernardi, Brinson, Browdy, Flores, Galanter, Hernandez, Holden, Pikus, Ridley, Thomas, Wax, Walters, Wu, Yaroslawski, Ferraro. 10 council members present and quorum, Mr. President.
Okay, the council will come to order. Sergeant. This is a meeting of the City Council for the City of Los Angeles on the 3rd day of April, 1992. There are 15 council districts in the city. The regular meeting days are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We are currently being viewed by cable subscribers throughout the Los Angeles area. We're also being monitored by council phone. The first order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Bernardi moves. Mrs. Pikus seconds. If there's no objection, unanimous vote. Next item.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
There's no objection, unanimous vote. We have, I think we have a couple presentations. Ms. Galanter, do you have a presentation?
Mr. President and members of the council, I'm here this morning to present another of the Good Earthkeeping Awards to a group of people who have done something that we're trying to do in City Hall. We could do more effectively, and lots of other people in the city could do and do more effectively as well. This Good Earthkeeping Award is being awarded to Security Pacific Plaza for the work they have done in instituting and maintaining a serious and effective recycling program. The building is managed by Tishman West Management Corporation. There's about 4,200 people working in this building. You can imagine that that generates a fair amount of paper and other recyclables. They started a recycling program in May of 1990 with the assistance of the janitorial company, American Building Maintenance, also represented here, and the guidance of Zakharoff Recycling Services, and they now recycle 75% of the building's waste stream. In everybody's wildest dreams, people talk about recycling maybe 25%, reducing the waste stream out of a given building by 25 or 30, or maybe if we're really good at it, 50%. And here in 2 years, there are less than 2 years, they're already doing 75% of the building's waste stream. This is an example to be emulated by others, I hope, sooner rather than later, I hope. And we have lots of Good Earthkeeping Awards. They are not finite. We will present them to anybody who does something as important as this and sets this good as an example. So I would like to introduce, and you'll have to tell me if I've missed anybody, from Security Pacific Plaza, we have Mr. William Whitaker and Mr. Richard Stevens of Tishman West, and we have Dennis Hooper and Jack Ferguson of American Building Maintenance, and Shauna Kandelian of Zakharoff Recycling Services, all of whom had something to do with this, and all of whom should join in accepting this award, even though we're actually giving it to Security Pacific Plaza. Where are you all? Somebody's got to take this.
very much.
Somebody want to say something?
Thank you.
Anybody want to say anything?
Well, thank you.
They have to go back and do their recycling. Get to work, Phyllis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kalina. Mr. Hernandez, you have a presentation.
Yes, Mr. President and members of the council, every now and then things kind of happen on their own in communities, and it's not based on some of the activities the city council might be doing, and this is one of those examples. But we have a judo club here from Cypress Park, and I want to let everybody know in Cypress Park there was a couple years ago a shooting during a Little League game where a young man was hurt, and a lot of concern as to what kinds of activities can continue at that park. And one of the things that kind of emerged pretty much on its own was a judo club. And what we have before us is 15 members from that judo club. After their presentation here, they're going to be headed to Las Vegas. But we've had some of those members who've been recognized in national competition. And I wanted to recognize the entire group, and please, if you please stand up so that they can see you. Thanks. But they're on the way to the Silver State competition in Las Vegas, and some of the members who have been honored before in competition have not been honored by the city, and I thought I'd bring them by today and give them some certificates. But I'd like to first call up, let me see how we got them here. Adam Leach. And Adam, this is for you being a competitor in the United States Judo Incorporated High School Nationals. I'd also like to call up Juan Marin. And Juan came in first place in the novice division in the United States Judo Incorporated High School Nationals. I'd also like to call up David Sanchez. He came in second place in the open weight division in the United States Judo Incorporated High School Nationals. And I'd also like to call up Christine Carrera, who came in second place in the 106-pound and under division in the United States Judo Incorporated High School Nationals. Mr. President and members of council, the reason I thought this group was special was because we have a member in our community, or a member who works in our community, who works for RTD, and there's a maintenance yard next to this park. And he felt that it was important that he do something with young people, and that's how this judo club emerged. And when I was down there meeting with him in regards to trying to give some information as to what's going on at Taylor Yard and talking to the community, he talked about how he's been doing this on his own. The city got him a trophy case for the recreation center, but the trophies are so large they don't fit in them. But the mats, he personally bought a van so he could take these kids around with him to the competitions. And so I have a certificate that I want to present, and it's like the second one I present. I call it the Heart of Los Angeles Award. It's for someone who works for RTD, who's been doing this on his own for the last 4 years. He's basically had over 150 youth go through his program, and that's to Mr. Louis Trammell, because I want to thank him on behalf of the city for the work he's been doing with these young people. You know, later on, we have a motion we'll be voting on. It's for $500 out of my funds for a young man named Mario Gonzalez. And Mario is ranked second in the country in judo. And he lives across the street in my district, across the street from my district in Councilman Alatorre's district, and Councilman Alatorre and I are going to work together to help Mario. But Mario came to this country at the age of 2, and his parents qualified for registry under the amnesty program so he can become a legal resident and a citizen. But the United States is not allowing Mario to compete on behalf of the United States in the Olympics. The American Judo Federation says you're not a citizen, even though we know you're going to become one because you've entered the process. And so he's going to be competing as a Mexican citizen in the Olympics, even though he lives in Lincoln Heights. But Mexico cannot fund his venture, and we are going to raise the money for him to go there. I want to share that with you because Councilman Alatorre and myself are going to help Mario raise some money, and any of you who choose to raise some money for him, I think it's important that we give a message that Mario's an Angelino, but a young man who chose judo to get out of trouble and has disciplined himself the way he has, didn't know he wasn't a citizen until he had the opportunity to represent this country. And Mr. Trammell, I want to thank you because what you're doing with these young people is important not only for them, but for the community of Cypress Park. And we as a city recognize that it's our youth and it's our people that are important. So again, I want you to know you'll have my support, and I want Mario to know that we'll be supporting him also. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. The next item.
Items 61 and 62 on the continued agenda today are continued Intergovernmental Relations Committee reports relative to fire sprinklers.
Mr. Holden, we kept these, we'll call them special. Did you want to make a motion?
I wanted to call mine special. That would be 63, and I wanted to...
Let's wait until we get
all
to
right,
it.
Mr. Holden just said he wants to make them all special, and I have a couple of minor amendments to mine.
Okay, we'll, first of all, 63, there's no objection to consideration, so the matter is before us. Anybody want to be heard on 63? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and we'll call it special. Next item.
64 is a continued motion, Holden Ferraro. Does he want that special also?
I don't know.
Yes,
Do
he's
you want to vote
shaking
on it,
his head.
Mr. Holden, or you want to call it special?
I says make,
If you're gonna call everything special when you're not in the council, I mean, what good are you, Nate? Call it special.
if I
it
told
special.
you all that, John, I'd be talking for the rest of my life.
Next item.
On today's regular agenda, item 1 is an ordinance first reading. You need 12 members, Mr. President.
Do we have 12 here today?
There's 11 in the chamber right now.
We're waiting for Mr. Wax, so we'll leave it on the table. Next item.
Item 2 is a Planning and Land Use Management Committee report, categorical exemption, and ordinances on the file.
We'll leave that on the table, and we'll leave 3 you want to continue, Mr. Burnson? How long do you want to 30-day continuance? That will be the May 5th. If there's no objections, that'll be the order. Next item.
Items 4 through 6 are committee reports, categorical exemption on 5.
Any specials? 4, 5, or 6? Any specials? If not, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next item.
Items 7 through 14 are Rule 16 motions and resolution, 10 votes to consider.
Okay, 7 through 14. Any objections to considering those? Seeing none, the matters are before. Well, you don't object to considering them? Okay. Anybody want to be heard in any of those items? If not, the public hearing is closed. Mr. Bernardi wants to talk on 8 and 12.
10.
And 10?
Special.
Okay. Prepare the roll on the balance. 7 through 14 with the exception of 8, 10, and 12. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, the chair recognizes Mrs. Walters for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to introduce a group of 31 students and 4 adults, 7th and 8th grade students, from Richland Junior High School. They're members of the Richland Junior High School Choir in Shafter, California, and I understand that's near Bakersfield. Welcome, you stand, and welcome to Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mrs. Walters. Next item.
On the supplemental agenda, item 15 is a Community Redevelopment and Housing Committee report. Copies are being distributed.
Item 15, is there any discussion on that? Any discussion on item 15? If not, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 eyes.
Those are approved. Next item.
Item 61 called special.
Mr. Holden, item 61 and 62. Your time is running, Mr. Holden.
61 was...
Your time is running.
61 was Ms. Walters, I think she'd call that special.
No, she called 63 special.
Oh, well, then I have no problem with her motion 61.
I think your office sent word to me that they
Oh,
wanted to
no,
continue.
I have no problem with 61. Move it.
Okay, prepare the roll on 61. Tabulate the vote.
11 eyes.
That is approved. Now we got 62, Mr. Holden.
Well, the fire department was going to come up and give us a report on that. We could hold that on the table until they get him as president.
Are they here?
They were here a week ago, and then we postponed it because they were still putting it together. So if they're not here, we'll hold it and get them here.
Okay. Next item.
63, are there amending motions written on 63?
Mrs.
No,
Walters.
it's just voice motion. I wanted to ask that the report be back within 2 weeks, back to the council within 2 weeks, and that the item be referred to the Public Works Committee. This is a motion requesting a progress report on the retrofitting of city-owned buildings with fire sprinklers. No, that's 63, Mr. Holden, according to the information I have
No,
here in my hand.
Hernandez Holden, that's my motion. I didn't...
63 in the paper that I have here, Mr. Holden, is a motion by Walters and Wachs
Well, they got the numbers wrong.
asking for a progress report regarding retrofitting of city-owned buildings with fire sprinklers. That's 63. 61 is your motion. Those are the amendments that I seek, Madam Clerk.
So you want the motion adopted today, but the report you want considered in Public Works Committee and reported back in 2 weeks on April the 21st?
Yes. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on that? If not, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 eyes.
That's approved. Next item.
64 called special.
Mr. Holden, 64.
Mr. President, I just been informed that the numbers on the agenda were numbered incorrectly. The correction was made and was not entered into my report, and that's why I call that special. But I do want to congratulate the County of Los Angeles for acting expeditiously and putting a bond measure on the ballot for this coming election and the tune of $100 million to retrofit the county-owned buildings in the city of Los Angeles, hopefully throughout the whole county, with fire suppression system, the sprinkler system. And as we already discussed in item 61, which was my motion that was been adopted, I want to commend Senator Roberti for introducing legislation to provide that the state of California do the same. So it's too bad that we have to have a tragic accident, as you will, at an intersection before we decide to put up a signal. But at least we've learning from some delayed experiences in the past in retrofitting these buildings with fire sprinkler systems. So I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Bernardi.
I heard the comment you said that the county's putting a bond issue, $100 million bond issue on the ballot. Is that for buildings in the city? Or is
That's
that
for county buildings.
for county buildings in the city? Or is that?
They have buildings outside of the city too.
Well, that's what I wanted to be clear. In other words, it's a county-wide bond issue.
That's usually the case when the county puts it on.
There's some strange things that go on.
Well-
Well, that place across the street. So I just wanted to be sure it wasn't just going to hit city taxpayers, and it's a county-wide bond issue is what it is.
Okay, prepare the roll on 64. No, 62.
62?
62, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next item.
64 was called special, Mr. President.
Mr. Holden,
You pass on that for a
oh,
moment.
you want to hold that until
Hold that, yeah.
fire department comes, right?
Yeah, you hear the
Okay,
Oh,
well,
the fire department is here to speak. Are you? Building and safety. What about the fire department? Where are they? Building safety here. They'll be speaking for what the fire department really wants.
This is in consideration of the requirement for telephones and elevators in order to provide emergency assistance in the case of a failing elevator. The department was asked to review information concerning changes to the building code that would allow for emergency communications and alarm systems that would call the fire department or local service or dispatch companies for people stranded in elevators. The department has reviewed the current code and has made some proposed code changes. The department recommends, and with the concurrence of the fire department, that a telephone be required in each car in each new building that would be connected to one of the following: a central building office or station, which is constantly attended, the 911 operator within the local area code in which the elevator car is located, or an alarm monitoring company approved by the fire department to provide 24-hour-a-day service and to contact the fire department according to fire department standards and procedures. Also, we would require an emergency alarm system that shall be connected to an electric bell or a horn or other kinds of electronic alarm devices producing an audible alarm of not less than 85 decibels, operable from the car and located inside and outside the building, and audible inside and outside the hoistway. In addition, we have required signage to be provided in the car having lettering not less than a quarter inch adjacent to the telephone, giving instructions on the use of the telephone and indicating that the car number, street address, and the city. There shall also be additional signage required to give instruction on the use of the emergency alarm system. This signage would be located also adjacent to the car emergency alarm. We would require that for existing buildings that we try to enforce this type of a requirement within 5 years. This requirement would be required for all new buildings as soon as the ordinance would be passed. And that within 2 years that we would require plans to be submitted on existing buildings. It's the Department of Building and Safety's recommendation that we refer this matter to the Public Safety Committee so that the Department of Building and Safety, Fire Department, the Police Department may have their input. We may have public hearings and make local findings, and then have the Public Safety Committee refer to the City Attorney for the development of an ordinance that would cover this subject.
Mr. President, I would move that the City Council request that an ordinance be drafted to achieve the goals and/or recommendations of the Building and Safety Department, and that proposed ordinance be referred to the Public Safety Committee and then to the Council. And I would say that should be done in 90 days.
that is an amendment. That would be to the Public Safety Committee.
Yes. But the draft ordinance should be submitted to the Public Safety Committee with the recommendations suggested by Department of Building and Safety. Yeah, he had the recommendation in writing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, just a second, just a second. Now, Mr. Bernardi, you want to be heard on this?
Two questions. One, do you have a cost? Does this apply to all of the public buildings as well as the private buildings?
Initially, it would apply to existing building, to new buildings, and within 5 years, we would
But
apply it to all.
It only applies to new buildings. What about the city buildings?
City buildings would be included as a part of existing buildings, and we would have an ordinance to require that within 5 years that they be retrofitted to
Do we
comply with
have
this
you have
requirement.
a cost estimate on it?
We don't have any cost estimates at this time.
None whatsoever?
No.
And what type of the present buildings, what type of, any building that has an elevator then, even for 3 stories?
We would exempt buildings 3 stories or less, except assembly occupancies.
I don't have any problem with making it apply to all new buildings, but I have some reservations about, and particularly when you have any idea what it'll cost to, if someone has a 7-story building and now retrofitted in this manner?
I don't have an idea at this time.
I think it'd be a good idea if someone would have some idea as what it would cost. You know, I guess we keep overlooking, and I just read an interesting article in that Cal State Northridge is going to do away with some housing that we provided funds, I guess, to build, and do away with the housing for the students because they're having trouble attracting professors, attracting employees because of the cost of housing. The city of Los Angeles, cost of it, many things, and then this involves buildings similar to this, with respect to the people not willing to come into Los Angeles, and they hope this way, by taking the housing that was set up for lower rent housing for students and making that available to the employees, the professors, the teachers that will be coming. And I was just handed a copy of 3 letters of a project that is in my district from 3 different states in the United States, of where they're sending letters out enticing these industries to move from Pacoima, to move to Kansas and a couple other states, and indicating all the benefits and all the advantages that they're offering to entice these firms, and I'm sure it goes on in other areas of the city, to move, particularly these firms that just moved from Culver City to Pacoima, to move to these states because of the housing, particularly housing, and particularly the cost of construction is so much lower. So I have some reservations here with you coming in here with these kind of recommendations without any figures being included at all. And I realize that the 5 years kind of at least helps in that regard, but I think it ought to apply to new buildings and not necessarily to the. Are there any high-rise buildings that have this kind of
High-rise buildings high-rise buildings are required to have these types of systems in them. Most of them have this type of a system already installed, one or a portion of this system already installed.
But will they be required then to put the whole system in?
Yes.
Has the committee held public hearings on it?
No.
Mr.
There been no public hearings on this requirement that's before us? It's just one of those 72-hour deals?
Well, I think Mr. Holden wants this to go to committee, isn't that correct?
We're not going to adopt it today, you're sending it to committee.
Yeah. There's, a motion is going to be adopted, but the ordinance and everything is going to committee.
No, I'm not going to adopt it. I think the whole matter ought to go to to a committee for a public hearing for the people that you'll get your time, Mr. Holden. But I think people that own buildings that's going to be impacted on this ought to be permitted to speak before the council adopts this program.
Okay, Mr. Holden, you have the floor.
Mr. Bernard, I think you really missed the point. What we're saying is that this request came about because some handicapped person got caught in an elevator, and I want you got caught in the elevator.
I know all the horror stories,
Okay,
Mr.
all
Holden.
right. No, you're not listening. Please. Got locked in the elevator. They pushed the alarm button. They picked up the phone, and they got New Jersey on the phone. All we're saying here is that if you pick up the phone, in case of an emergency, you could have either a button in to alarm system, or you can get 911 in an elevator. If there's only one elevator, what does that actually cost? We got to provide for the safety. Well, never mind.
My motion is to send the
You
whole
vote your
matter
conscience,
to committee.
mister. I hate for you to be caught in the elevator and you dial New Jersey because you can't get a local emergency. Thank you, Mr. Bernardi. I'm shocked.
Okay,
You were shocked. I didn't know you were subject to being shocked, Mr. Holden.
okay, what do we have before us now?
Was there a second to Mr. Bernardi's motion?
Was there a second to Mr. Bernardi's motion?
To refer it to committee.
Refer it to committee. I'll second it. Okay, prepare the roll.
Will you even vote on this?
Yeah, so set it to committee. That
We want to.
I think Mr. Bernardi's right, Mr. Holden, that there should be public hearings on it before we adopt it.
Mr. President, you got to have an ordinance to debate. You got to have something to debate before you can adopt.
You got to have a debate so you can know what you're going to put in the ordinance. That's,
Hey, look, delay, go be my guest. I'm voting no.
Did we send this to the Transportation Committee? Are elevators transportation? I think we should send it to Mr. Holden's committee.
okay, is there any objections to send it to committee? Okay, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
That has gone to committee, Mr. Holden. Okay, the next item.
Mr. President, council now has 12 members in the chamber. You held one on the desk. That's an ordinance first reading.
The machine only says, oh, there, okay. Prepare 1, 2, and 3. Oh, no, 1, 2.
Oh, you want to take 1 and 2? 2, all right, then.
And 1 and 2 and 3.
3 was already continued to May
Oh,
the
that's
5th.
right, that's right, I'm sorry. Okay, those are the only ordinances we have?
Yes.
Prepare the roll on those. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Those are approved. Next item.
Item 8 called special.
Mr. Bernardi, you call 8 special?
Concerned about. I heard Mr. Hernandez mention he's been here since he was 2 years old, been living here. How old is he now?
1,
He hasn't applied for citizenship?
he applied through the registry program, which is automatic residency. If you've been here continuously for the last 10 years, and he's been here continuously since he was 2.
Well, I mean, he was eligible to apply for citizenship, was he not?
No, he did not. See, his parents were not eligible for citizenship, for residency, until they went through a process, and it was the amnesty program, and registry is different from amnesty. What it did is they proved their continuous existence here for the last 19 years.
I don't have any problem with they've been here. Apparently they've been here legally for quite a long time.
Right.
My concern is that we're providing money for someone who is going to represent Mexico.
I
And
think he's
not-
representing Los Angeles, Mr. Bernardi.
What?
He's representing Los Angeles
Well,
as far as I'm
that's not
concerned.
what you told, what you mentioned. You mentioned he'll be, they won't allow him, if this were someone who needed help and he was going to represent the United States, then it'd be a different story.
Well,
We
But if I heard what
don't
you-
have a team, Mr. Hernandez.
Yeah, and I understand that. I guess the reason I thought it was important that I point that out is here we have a young man who thought he was a citizen.
I heard you, but I want to be clear. You said that he will be representing Mexico. Is that correct?
I said he's going to be competing on Mexico's team. Yes, he's competing on Mexico's team.
Well,
Mr. Haggerty, is there any problem on this?
The question is whether or not there's a public purpose, and the council has wide discretion in determining what's a public purpose. And arguably, even though he's competing with Mexico, there could be some publicity given to the city of LA because we'll mention that he is a resident of the city of LA, so based on that, well, I may be stretching it, but the courts allow the legislative body to stretch it in effect when it comes to a public purpose. I mean, the city does, through the general city purposes contracts, fund all kind of activities in the city of LA. And
Yeah, but the rules change all the
promotes
time.
the city of LA.
Okay, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, you know, members of the council, I even think it's funny that the question's even asked. And I know you do, Mr. Bernardi, and you know, I wish everybody could claim to be of ancestry from California. That's not the reality. I wish we all understood that the city is named Los Angeles. That is a reality. But a young man who thought he was a citizen, who did a good job, and a council person who's representing that district chose to help him with city funds. And you questioned it. I'm going to ask council to support this motion. I honestly believe that Mexico cannot support him because they view him as an American. They do not want to support him, but he does qualify to compete. He's ranked number 2 in the nation. His only problem is where people claim his citizenship to be. And he is going to be a citizen. And he's there with a lot of pride, and I have a lot of pride in him. And I'm sorry the rules just make it difficult for people to be who they are. Just good people. Thank you.
Okay, we have item number 8 before, Mr. Wax, you want to be heard?
First of all, I assume, Mr. Haggerty, that this is a legal expenditure?
Yeah. As I just indicated, you could find that there's public purpose here because this is giving publicity to the city of Los Angeles.
Okay. As long as it's illegal, in the past, I have been on this council a lot of times, and we have allocated monies to send schools to different places. We have sent orchestras, choruses, schools, athletic teams. We've helped their funding to go and represent us in Washington, in other countries. I know that we have helped young people's groups, the choruses, orchestras, things of that, to go when they have been invited for a special reason to participate in national and international events. We have cut out most of that out of budget realities, and our cultural affairs, most of that money used to come from cultural affairs, and that money is now under a new plan, and that's been cut out. But the accounts that we have here from which Mr. Hernandez is taking this money, which is really a small amount, it's $10,000 for a council district for an entire year, have traditionally been within the prerogative of the council member of the district to make their judgment. These accounts will also probably be cut out next year, and we won't be arguing over these things because I don't think that there's going to be $10,000 for each council office with the next budget. But in this one, it's been the discretion of the council member of the district. And he is elected, or she is elected, to make value judgments as to how to best spend those monies so long as they are legal and meet city purposes. And it's up to Mr. Hernandez to make that judgment, just as you make yours and I make mine. And I've not seen us question one expenditure from an account like that other than to make sure that it is legal. I mean, you can't do something that isn't legal. But if it's legal, then he's got to be held accountable for the judgments he makes. And he feels very strong about it and is willing to accept that responsibility. And I think we should too. But this is not new. I've seen countless times when we have helped groups go and represent their communities or their cities, whether it's sister city groups or you name it, on things like that. Again, as I said, I don't think we'll do it in the future because of the lack of funds, but I certainly don't see why Mr. Hernandez should not be permitted to make that judgment.
Mr. Holden.
Mike, would the Mexican Olympic team permit him to participate? So he's already on the team. He will be on the team. Well, you know, that really caused me a problem. You know why? Because if he's that good, that means we won't get the gold. I mean, but that's okay. As long as he brings the gold back home, I guess it's all right. And we'll have one extra goal. We have 2 chances of getting the gold in that way. And with that, we'll vote aye because we have 2 chances of getting the gold, right? Number 1 and 2. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Alatorre.
Mr. President and members, I don't even know why we're arguing about $500 that Mr. Hernandez wants to give to a young man that lives on the border of, that lives in my district, but he borders Mr. Hernandez's district. It's a decision that he made. It is legal. There's nothing illegal about it. And we do this all the time. I mean, we've done it on numerous occasions in the years that I've been here. And so long as there's a public purpose, which is the city attorney has already stated that there is, and so long as it is legal, then we've never questioned the expenditures of money by one of the members of the council on something that he felt very strongly about. I too would rise in support of the expenditure of this money and support Mr. Hernandez's effort to raise the funds to sufficient so that this young man can compete. It's the biggest tragedy is that he's not competing for the United States, which he wanted to do, but because of the Olympic Organizing Committee, they have made the decisions and they have rules, and the only way he can compete is with the Mexican team. So I'd ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Galanter.
You know, one of the things that Los Angeles has going for us is that we have a whole lot of people with a whole lot of energy, and a lot of them come from many, many different cultures. That's why we're an exciting city, it's why we're a great city, and it's why we're going to be better in the future. And it seems to me that America is the melting pot and Los Angeles as the most, with the most ingredients of probably any U.S. city. We ought to be very proud of it, and we ought to proclaim it. And if we have a young man who is talented enough to do this, and he's from here, I think we ought to send him off with our blessings. We ought to send him with a city flag wrapped around him, and we ought to look forward to his return with medals in his pocket. I don't understand why there should be any question at all. I'm one of those people who thinks it's really nifty that the U.S. medal winner at the Olympics was named Yamaguchi. I love that. This is a testament to what we're all about in this city. And for heaven's sake, why should there be any question? Let's vote the money and get on with it.
Mr. Bernson.
You know, it's legal. This is a member of Mr. Hernandez's community. This is a young man that might not have an opportunity otherwise to participate in something that is going to give recognition and perhaps glory to our city. I don't know what this whole discussion is about. As long as it is legal and we have an opinion from the city attorney, it's coming from Mr. Hernandez's discretionary fund. It is going to have a beneficial effect upon a young man who represents our community. And I say let's just vote on it and get it over with.
Okay, Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Previous question, Mr. President.
Prepare the roll on the previous question. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. That is approved. Next item.
Now you have the motion before you, Mr. President. Item 8 is before you for adoption. The motion, Hernandez.
Prepare the roll on item number 8. Tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 1 no.
That is approved. Next item.
Item 10 called special, and council should note that communication from the chairperson, Community and Economic Development Committee has been distributed for your consideration. There's an amending motion 10A as well on the desk by Councilman
Mr. Ridley Thomas, call that special?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, simply want to move this forward. I think Chair of Community Redevelopment and Housing concurs, and this matter is largely pro forma with respect of execution of contracts and the like, and I urge and I vote.
I'll give it to Pat. Yeah. Well, go ahead.
10A is on the desk, Mr. President.
Any discussion on 10A? If not, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Now we have 10 as amended. Prepare the roll on 10 as amended. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved.
Forthwith, Mr. President.
Forthwith.
Thank you,
on that
sir.
item.
Item 12 called special.
Mr. Holden called 12 special. Mr. Bernardi, did you call it special? Okay, you have the floor.
I need to ask the city attorney a question because
Who's going to?
Did you call me, Mr. President? Mr. President?
No, because Mr. Bernardi called it special.
Oh, you just like calling my name. Thank you.
I need to know what does it take? I don't have any particularly objection to this, but I want to know how the city attorney justifies this and yet turns down similar requests for the Salvation Army and for the other agencies that somehow have been labeled as having a religious connotation. Now, I've tried to give some funds from my account to these various organizations, and because of the religious connotation, it's been turned down. Now, am I going to be now get a more favorable answer when I ask for the mission and for the Salvation Army and the facility we have in my former district, Van Nuys, that does such a wonderful job? Mr. Haggerty, is this the argument I get from the city attorney? It's a violation of a separation of church and state, because this specifically spells out it's for an Easter celebration. And I assure you, I'll be celebrating Easter in a church.
Yeah.
Well, all I want to know is will the mission and the Salvation Army now qualify under the same ruling that apparently the city attorney has agreed to here? That's all I want to know, and if that's the case, that's fine.
I'm not aware of what our ruling was, as you said, in reference to Salvation Army and whatever this other group was and what the bases.
We told we couldn't, that I couldn't use any of my funds for local. We're talking about local mission, the mission, there's a couple of them, and the Salvation Army. You say then it would be perfectly legal for me to take money from
I don't know, Mr. I cannot answer that question about those organizations, Mr. Bernardi. I'm not aware one way or the other about our offices expressing an opinion as to that funding.
Well, will you check it out for me?
Yes, I will.
You check it out.
Yes.
Anyone else want to be heard? If not, prepare the roll on 10.
Yeah, I mean, Ernie, because I've gave money. The Salvation Army, I mean, as long as they have a program to feed the homeless and to help the homeless in our district, and which is a very valid program. You can't give it to have for religious services or religious purposes. But if a religious group sponsors a non-religious activity like feeding the homeless or sheltering or something of that certainly should be able to qualify for the money.
Okay, prepare the roll on 10, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
On 12, I'm sorry. Next item.
This is a time for comments from the public and non-agenda items.
Okay, we have Richard Robinson.
Mr. President, members of council, the recent Looney Tunes at Pershing Square will end if footbeats that keep the 18th Street gang out of Pershing Square begin. Thank you.
Wendy Hubbard.
As I left council chambers on Wednesday, I was approached by a woman in the corridor who told me she was most impressed by my presentation. She asked me what my background in finance was and stated her position on the council and the budget. After listening, we both decided that I should let the taxpayers know what we discussed. This will be brief. I have worked in finance for the last 13 years. I have worked for at least 5 Fortune 500 companies in the finance capacity. I have an AA degree from West Los Angeles College with 20 additional units to that I haven't been able to finish because I've been raising my child. I have heavy hands-on experience dealing with multi-billion-dollar budgets. My expertise is in travel and expense reports and audits to find out if money has been misused or misappropriated. I am an expert in that area. Now, the Consul, Tom Bradley's budget and their approval. From my experience, I know that Tom Bradley will lobby the hell out of an individual to have his way regarding anything that he wishes. His wrath defies logic. If you have one shred of doubt concerning an issue, he will wear you down until you cave in. He is the most overbearing individual I know. Of course, we have some council members who will sell out for such small things as Chanel purses. And as talk show host George Putnam put it, some will sell a hot stove if given the opportunity. So in closing, the control that Tom Bradley has over the city and our council to go along with his wishes must end. We are entering into the 21st century. We have good council members, but a bad example has been set for them by our mayor. I hope that by my speaking out, I am able to encourage those council members who lack the necessary fortitude concerning our mayor to stand tall when the budget is submitted for debate. I beseech you, do not sell your souls and the souls of our taxpayers down the drain for the mayor's wishes.
Peter Baxter.
Mr. President, members of the Board of members of Your Honourable Council, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peter Baxter and I live at 1319 Ingraham Street in Los Angeles. It is respectfully submitted that the recent fire in February at the County of Los Angeles Health Services building on Temple Street and Figueroa Street offers an excellent example of the potential of a turbojet engine emissions in the control of fire in a high-rise. As I observed that fire on television, I saw thick black plumes of smoke pouring out of windows that had been broken out by the intensity of the heat from within the structure. That thick black smoke was evidence of ample oxygen reaching the fuel which was on fire. The smoke was pouring out of the top of the windows that had been broken out. That had been broken out, and the fresh, new, ample supply of oxygen was rushing in the very same breach of the high-rise skin. At the lower part of that breach of the high-rise skin, of course, smoke is visible, oxygen is not visible. This is where the helicopter with a turbojet engine mounted on it to act as a source of fire suppressant would be employed in fighting fire in a high-rise structure. The fire suppressant would be the non-combustible emissions from the turbojet engine, which would be within the control of the helicopter firefighter, who would direct these emissions at the target of the lower portion of the breach of the high-rise through which oxygen was entering to provide combustion with the fuel. The thrust required would be sufficient to drive these emissions for a distance of 50 feet, more or less, in a tightly controlled stream of emissions, not being dissipated on the way to the target and entering the target breach of the high-rise with sufficient force so as to compete with, overwhelm, and displace completely the air containing the oxygen, and which air is being drawn into the fire site to provide that essential element in fire, oxygen. Wherever that steady, continuous, forceful stream of oxygen-free gases from the turbojet engine enters the burning structure, the fire site is inundated immediately by such gases. This constant, repeated, continuous flooding of the fire site has to have one and only one consequence. The fire has to go out. What size of turbojet engine would provide this necessary delivery of oxygen-free, non-combustible fire suppressant gases? the very smallest such turbojet engine in working order, not necessarily in working order to meet the requirements of airworthiness, but in working order, a salvage engine would probably be as competent for fire suppression as one hot off the production line, all of which is respectfully submitted. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, that's all the cards we have, so the public comment period is closed. Next item,
Motions for posting and referral.
that'll be the order. Next item.
Excuses on the desk. Councilman Wu has requested to be excused from today's meeting due to illness. Meets council policy.
Unanimous vote.
Councilwoman Galanter has requested to be excused city business on April the 8th. Meets council policy.
Let's review that again. Who's unanimous vote?
And Councilwoman Pikus has requested to be excused city business on May 15th. Meets council policy.
Unanimous vote.
That clears the desk, Mr. President.
Okay, do we have adjourning motions? Would everybody please stand? I ask we adjourn in MB Venable, Pat Mount's uncle. All members on that. Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, members of council, I ask that we adjourn in the name of the family of Joe Beta, his wife, Dora Maya Beta, their son, Joe Beta II, and their grandson, Joe Beta III. The family died on March 28th due to an automobile accident on Highway 38, and they're from residents of East Los Angeles. And they have 2 sons, 1 daughter, and 7 grandchildren remaining.
Mr. Holden?
Mr. President, I ask that we adjourn in memory of the Deputy Sheriff Nelson H. Yamamoto.
We did that already.
We did that already? All right.
Mrs. Pikus?
I ask that we adjourn in memory of Carol W. Parcher, former mayor and council member for many years in the city of Glendale, and related to the founding family of Glendale.
Yeah, all members on
All
that.
members.
Mr. Wax? Here.
Two, Mr. President. First, I'd like the council to adjourn in the memory of Lucy Lewis, who at
Second that.
93 plus, it's not quite sure, really was one of the really great American Indian potters of all time. And she finally passed. And Fawn Navasi, who was a younger potter who was really coming up, died tragically very soon after in an automobile crash, and I'll give the clerk the pertinent information.
Ms. Galanter?
I don't know how I could have neglected this as we were going around the circle, but I certainly think we should adjourn in memory of Paul Henreid.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. All members.
Before we call a vote, forthwith on number 7. Call the roll.
Aye.
The council is adjourned.